My name is Calvin, a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur from Seattle who built a successful software company from nothing but pure determination. 4 years ago, when I asked my parents for a $5,000 investment to launch my startup, they laughed and refused. Just 3 months later, they happily invested $50,000 in my cousin Jackson's business venture, which eventually failed spectacularly. The most shocking part: now that my company is worth millions, my parents suddenly claim it belongs to the entire family. Let me tell you how I dealt with this betrayal. Before I begin my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had family members who only supported you when it benefited them. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle with my parents, Frank and Laura. From as early as I can remember, they had very traditional mindsets about careers and success. To them, the ideal path was getting a stable corporate job, with benefits putting in 30 years of service and retiring with a pension. Entrepreneurship was viewed as risky and unreliable, something that other people did, but not sensible people like us. When I was 8, I started my first business venture, a lemonade stand on our street corner. I had carefully calculated costs for lemons, sugar, cups, and ice, and even made colorful signs to attract customers. After making $30 in profit that weekend, I proudly showed my earnings to my parents. My father chuckled and patted my head. "That's cute, Calvin. A nice little hobby." But real businesses aren't that simple. This response became a pattern. In middle school, I started fixing neighbors' computers for small fees. By 14, I had a regular client base and was making decent pocket money. My parents dismissed it as just a phase and a good way to keep busy, never acknowledging the entrepreneurial spirit behind it. Then there was my cousin Jackson. 2 years older than me, and the undisputed golden child of our extended family. He attended an expensive private high school while I went to public school. His parents, my Aunt Diana and Uncle Robert, constantly bragged about his achievements at family gatherings, and my parents would nod in approval and admiration. "Jackson is applying to Ivy League schools," my aunt would announce proudly. "His academic counselor says he has excellent chances." My mother would turn to me and say, "Calvin, you should ask Jackson for advice on your studies. Maybe some of his dedication will rub off on you." These comparisons were constant and painful. It wasn't that I was doing poorly. I maintained a solid B+ average while running my computer repair service and participating in the entrepreneurship club. But in my family's eyes, I wasn't on the right track like Jackson was. When college application time came around, Jackson was accepted to an elite private university on the East Coast with a hefty tuition. My parents attended his acceptance celebration dinner, toasting to his bright future. When I decided to attend our state university with a focus on business administration, my parents seemed disappointed, despite the practical financial sense it made. "We could have helped more with a better school," my father said, though they had never offered and I knew their finances were tight. "But I guess this is more your speed." Throughout college, I worked multiple jobs to minimize student loans. I was a teaching assistant for business classes, worked weekends at a local electronics store, and maintained my computer repair service. Meanwhile, Jackson had his apartment expenses, and even a car fully funded by his parents and my aunt and uncle. After graduation, I took a job at a mid-sized software company. It wasn't my dream, but it paid well enough and offered valuable industry experience. My parents finally seemed pleased. "See a steady paycheck and benefits. That's what responsible adults aim for," my father said when I got the offer. The job was stable but unfulfilling. I spent my days implementing systems designed by others, attending pointless meetings, and watching the clock. But a silver lining appeared in the form of my manager, Alicia. Unlike my family, she recognized my potential. "You have good instincts for product development," she told me, after I suggested improvements to our inventory management system. Have you ever thought about developing your own solutions? These conversations with Alicia became frequent. She became a mentor, encouraging me to explore my ideas during lunch breaks and after hours. For the first time, someone was taking my entrepreneurial ambitions seriously. As I spent more time developing my business concepts, I naturally had less time for family gatherings. My parents noticed and complained. "You never come to Sunday dinners anymore," my mother would say during our weekly phone calls. "Jackson always makes time for family despite his important job." What they failed to understand was that I was forging my own path, one that would eventually lead me away from the corporate world they valued so highly and toward the entrepreneurial future I had always envisioned for myself. After 2 years at the software company, I had identified a significant gap in the market. Small businesses were struggling with inventory management. The existing solutions were either too expensive enterprise systems designed for large corporations or primitive spreadsheets that lacked functionality. I envisioned creating affordable, user-friendly inventory management software, specifically designed for small businesses with under 50 employees. I spent 6 months researching the market, surveying over 100 small business owners about their pain points, and developing detailed specifications for my solution. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Business owners were desperate for exactly what I was planning to build. "If you can deliver what you are describing at that price point, I would sign up immediately," said one local bookstore owner, who was currently tracking inventory with pen and paper. With the concept validated, I approached my friend David, a talented programmer I had met at a local tech meetup. He was equally excited about the idea and agreed to help develop the prototype on evenings and weekends. We worked tirelessly for months, fueled by pizza and energy drinks coding, until the early morning hours before heading to our day jobs. After 4 months, we had a working prototype that we tested with 5 local businesses. The feedback was better than we had dared to hope. "This is exactly what I have been looking for," said a boutique clothing store manager. "It is intuitive enough that my non-tech savvy staff can use it, but powerful enough to handle our inventory complexities." With this validation, I made the decision that would change the course of my life. I would quit my corporate job and pursue my business full-time. When I told my parents, their reaction was predictably negative. "You are throwing away a perfectly good career for a pipe dream," my father said, shaking his head in disappointment. "Do you know how many small businesses fail in the first year?" "I thought we raised you to be more practical than this," my mother added. "What about health insurance, retirement benefits?" Despite their discouragement, I had done my financial calculations. I had saved $20,000 over the past 3 years by living frugally and taking on extra consulting work. My business plan showed that I needed $25,000 total to fully launch the company, rent a small office space, and sustain operations until revenue started flowing. I was just $5,000 short. After considering various options, I decided to approach my parents for the remaining funds. I knew they had helped cousins and other family members with larger sums in the past. Surely they would be willing to invest in their own son, especially with such a solid business plan. I prepared a professional presentation, complete with market analysis, financial projections, and testimonials from our test users. I even printed professionally bound copies of the business plan. I invited them to dinner at their home, planning to make my pitch after the meal. As we finished dessert, I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. "Mom, Dad, I would like to show you something I have been working on," I began confidently. "I have developed a software solution that fills a real need in the market, and I would like to discuss a small investment opportunity with you." I walked them through the presentation, explaining the market gap, our solution, and the positive feedback from test users. I outlined the financials, showing conservative revenue projections and a clear path to profitability within 18 months. I finished by explaining that I needed just $5,000 to reach my funding goal. Throughout my presentation, I could see my father's expression growing increasingly dismissive. My mother looked concerned, but remained silent. When I finished, there was an uncomfortable pause before my father spoke. "Calvin, this is exactly the kind of impulsive decision-making that worries us about you," he said. "Real businesses are not built by young people with no experience jumping ship from stable employment. But Dad, I have done extensive market research and already have interested customers I countered." He waved his hand dismissively. "Market research done by amateurs means nothing. You need to pay your dues in the corporate world. First, learn how real business operates." My mother finally spoke up. "Honey, we just want what is best for you. And right now, that means being practical and sticking with your job. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, when you have more experience and savings, you can revisit this idea." "Can I at least show you the actual software we have built?" I asked, feeling my opportunity slipping away. "Calvin, we are not going to give you $5,000 to throw away on this," my father said firmly. "The fact that you would even ask shows that you are not ready for the responsibilities of business ownership." I sat there, stunned by their complete unwillingness to even consider the detailed business plan I had spent months preparing. They had made their decision before I had even begun my presentation. "I see," I said quietly, closing my laptop and gathering my materials. "Thank you for dinner." The drive home was a blur, as I fought back tears of frustration and disappointment. Not only had they refused to help, but they had also dismissed my dream without truly listening or trying to understand. Their lack of faith in me cut deeper than the financial rejection. That night I lay awake, questioning my judgment. Was I making a terrible mistake? Was my business idea really just a naive fantasy, as my parents suggested? For a moment, doubt crept in. But then I remembered the genuine enthusiasm from our test users, the market gap we had identified, and Alicia's unwavering support. By morning, my determination had hardened. I would find another way. I took on an evening job at a local restaurant, working as a server from 6 to midnight after spending all day on software development. The schedule was brutal. I would code from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, then rush to the restaurant for the dinner shift, returning home, exhausted around 1 in the morning, only to repeat the cycle the next day. The toll on my health was evident. I lost weight, developed dark circles under my eyes, and my social life became non-existent. But within 2 months, I had earned the additional $5,000 I needed. The cost had been high, but I now had complete ownership of my company and the freedom to build it according to my vision without having to justify my decisions to skeptical family members. 3 months after my parents rejected my business proposal, our extended family gathered at my grandparents' house for our annual Thanksgiving celebration. I had been working nonstop on my business and was exhausted. But family obligations could not be avoided entirely. I arrived with mixed feelings, still hurt by my parents' rejection, but determined to stay positive. The usual suspects were all there. My grandparents, Robert and Eleanor, hosting in their spacious suburban home. My parents arrived shortly after me, giving me quick, somewhat awkward hugs. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins filtered in, including Jackson, who arrived fashionably late, wearing an expensive designer suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Calvin, good to see you, man," Jackson said, giving me a firm handshake. "Still at the software company?" "Actually, I started my own business," I replied. "Really? That is interesting," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Before I could elaborate, he was pulled away by my aunt to greet other relatives. Dinner was served, and we all gathered around the large dining table, laden with traditional Thanksgiving fare. As usual, the conversation revolved around family news, politics, and the occasional gossip. I was quietly eating my turkey when Jackson cleared his throat and stood up. "Everyone, I have an exciting announcement to make," he declared, instantly commanding the attention of the entire table. "After much planning, I am launching my own business venture." The room erupted in enthusiastic responses. My aunt clasped her hands in delight, while my uncle beamed with pride. My father raised his glass in a toast. "Tell us all about it, Jackson," my grandfather encouraged. "It is called Gift Elite Jackson," explained with practiced charm. "A premium subscription box service for corporate gifts. We will curate high-end products for executives to give to their clients, employees, and partners. Each box will be customized to the recipient's preferences and delivered in elegant packaging." As he described the concept, a sense of déjà vu washed over me. 6 months earlier at our Easter gathering, I had mentioned a similar idea as one of several business concepts I was considering. Jackson had dismissed it then as too niche. Yet here he was presenting virtually the same concept as his groundbreaking business idea. "We have already secured partnerships with several luxury brands," Jackson continued, though he conspicuously avoided naming any. "And we are in talks with major corporations about annual subscriptions." My mother looked at Jackson with admiration. "That sounds absolutely wonderful. So sophisticated." "Indeed," my father agreed. "A real business model with tangible products and established customer base." I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes at that comment, remembering how he had dismissed my extensively researched software business as a pipe dream. As the dinner progressed, my uncle turned to me. "So, Calvin, how is your little project going?" Before I could answer, the conversation had already moved back to Jackson's venture. I excused myself to get some air on the back porch, feeling invisible in my own family. Through the window, I could hear the ongoing conversation. My father's voice carried clearly. "Jackson, your Aunt Laura and I would like to support your venture. We would be happy to invest $50,000 to help you get started." I froze in disbelief. $50,000. They had refused me a mere $5,000, claiming they wanted me to be practical and responsible. Yet they were offering 10 times that amount to my cousin without hesitation. "That is incredibly generous," Uncle Frank Jackson replied. "With your business acumen, I would welcome your advice as well." My mother's voice joined in. "I will talk to Aunt Patricia and Uncle George as well. I am sure they would want to be part of this exciting opportunity." I stood there stunned as they organized what amounted to a family investment pool for Jackson's business, the very type of support they had so firmly denied me. When I returned to the dining room, they were raising their glasses in a toast. To Jackson, my father proclaimed proudly, "Our family's first real entrepreneur." The words stung like a physical blow. I was invisible, my own entrepreneurial efforts completely disregarded. I struggled to maintain my composure for the remainder of the dinner. As relatives began to leave, my grandmother Eleanor pulled me aside. Unlike the others, she had always shown genuine interest in my endeavors. "I heard about your business, Calvin," she said quietly. For the next 15 minutes, I described my inventory management software and the small businesses it would help. Her eyes lit up with understanding. "That sounds like something that could really help people," she said. "I always knew you had a good head for solving practical problems." Her simple acknowledgement meant more to me than she could know. Before I left, she pressed a check into my hand. "It is not much, just $1,000, she whispered. "But I want you to know that someone in this family believes in you." I hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. As I was preparing to leave, Jackson approached me in the hallway. "Hey, Calvin. When Gift Elite takes off, I might need someone to handle our technical systems. I could probably find a position for you." His condescending offer to hire me was the final insult of the evening. I thanked him politely but declined, saying I was fully committed to my own business. The following month at Christmas, the family's bias became even more obvious. Jackson received business books, an expensive laptop, and various high-end office accessories, all wrapped with cards expressing support for his entrepreneurial journey. My gifts consisted of a generic sweater and a gift card to a casual dining chain. Rather than let the resentment consume me, I channeled it into motivation. Every time I felt discouraged or exhausted, I remembered that Thanksgiving dinner and pushed myself harder. I also made the difficult but necessary decision to distance myself from regular family gatherings, making excuses about work commitments. It was a matter of self-preservation, protecting my mental health, and maintaining focus on my goals. As winter turned to spring, both Jackson's and my businesses began taking shape, though, along very different trajectories. My daily routine was grueling but productive. I would wake at 5:30 in the morning to handle emails and administrative tasks, before diving into software development from 7 until late afternoon. I had finally quit the restaurant job after saving enough money, but my budget remained extremely tight. Every dollar was scrutinized and invested back into the business. I found an affordable office space in a rundown building in a less desirable part of town. The heating was unreliable, the pipes occasionally leaked, and the elevator worked only when it was in the mood, but the rent was within my budget. I furnished it with second-hand desks and chairs found on online classified ads and at thrift stores. During a local tech networking event, I met Sophia, a marketing specialist who had just been laid off from a major tech company. After hearing my pitch and seeing the prototype, she made an unexpected proposal. "I cannot afford to pay you market rate right now," I admitted, after she expressed interest in joining the company. "How about equity instead of salary?" she countered. "I believe in what you are building, and I would rather own a piece of something meaningful than collect a paycheck from another soulless corporation." With Sophia handling marketing and customer acquisition, we began reaching out to local small businesses for beta testing. The response was encouraging. Within weeks, we had 10 businesses actively using our software and providing valuable feedback. I will never forget the day we signed our first paying customer. It was a local bookstore that had been struggling with inventory management for years. "This is going to change how we operate," the owner said as she signed the contract. "For the first time, I will actually know what books we have without doing a physical count." We celebrated that milestone with pizza and inexpensive champagne in our shabby office, a small team, united by belief in our vision. Meanwhile, Jackson's Gift Elite was making a very different kind of splash. His launch party was featured in the local business journal, a lavish affair at an upscale hotel with professional PR catering and gift bags for attendees. The photos showed my parents beaming proudly alongside Jackson as he cut a ribbon on an elaborate display of sample gift boxes. The same business journal ran a feature article on local entrepreneurs to watch with Jackson's professionally photographed image prominently displayed. The article included a quote from my father. "Our family has always supported innovation and entrepreneurship. We are proud to be backing such a forward-thinking venture." The irony was painful, but I had no time to dwell on it. I was too busy meeting with the director of our local small business association, who had heard about our software and became an enthusiastic advocate. She invited me to present at a regional business conference, which led to our first wave of serious clients. While Jackson focused on flashy marketing and rapid expansion, I concentrated on perfecting our product and ensuring customer satisfaction. Jackson opened offices in 3 cities within the first 4 months. I maintained our single modest office and invested in better servers and development tools. Reports from family members indicated that Gift Elite was growing rapidly. According to my mother's updates, they had secured contracts with several regional companies and were in talks with national chains. Jackson had hired a team of 20 employees and was featured in a national business magazine's 30 Under 30 list. In contrast, my company, which I had named Inventory IQ, was growing slowly but sustainably. By the 6-month mark, we had 100 paying customers, mostly small local businesses, and had hired 2 additional developers to help maintain and improve the software. We reached profitability in month 7, a milestone that many startups never achieve. The first signs of trouble with Jackson's business began appearing around this time. Through industry connections, I heard rumors of Gift Elite missing payments to suppliers and high staff turnover. A former employee reached out to me on a professional networking site, asking if I had any positions available. "The culture there is toxic," she confided. "They are spending money like water, but not delivering on promises to clients." I maintained a professional distance from the situation, focusing instead on Inventory IQ's steady growth. We added features requested by customers, improved the user interface, and developed a mobile companion app. Our customer satisfaction ratings were consistently above 95%. Around the 9-month mark, I received an unexpected call from Jackson late one night. His voice was slightly slurred, suggesting he had been drinking. "Calvin, I need your advice," he said, without preamble. "We are having some issues with our inventory tracking and order fulfillment system." I was surprised by the request, but willing to help. "What kind of issues?" "Customers are receiving the wrong items. Some orders are going out late, and we cannot seem to keep track of what products we have in stock." These were exactly the problems my software was designed to solve. I explained some basic inventory management principles and suggested he might benefit from a system like Inventory IQ. "We do not need your little software," he snapped defensively. "We just need to tweak our enterprise system. I thought you might have some useful suggestions, but never mind." The call ended abruptly, but it confirmed what I had suspected. Behind the glossy facade, Gift Elite was struggling with fundamental operational issues. 2 weeks later, my grandmother called to tell me about an emergency family meeting regarding Jackson's business. I had not been invited. "They are in trouble, Calvin," she said. "Your parents are taking out a second mortgage to provide more funding. Jackson is promising that they are on the verge of landing major contracts that will turn everything around, but I am not convinced." I felt a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, I was concerned for my parents potentially losing significant money. On the other, there was a small, not entirely noble part of me that felt a sense of vindication. The business they had enthusiastically supported over mine was proving to be exactly the risky venture they had accused my company of being. The situation deteriorated rapidly after that. Gift Elite laid off half its staff, canceled orders with suppliers, and was hit with multiple lawsuits from dissatisfied customers who had paid for subscription boxes that never arrived. An online business publication ran an expose detailing poor quality products, unfulfilled promises, and chaotic management. Within a year of its launch, Gift Elite filed for bankruptcy. The family had lost over $200,000, with my parents bearing the largest share of the financial damage. Their retirement savings were severely impacted. Jackson, rather than facing the consequences of his failed business, announced he was going to find himself through extended travel in Europe, effectively abandoning the mess he had created. That same week, Inventory IQ won the Regional Small Business Innovation Award, which came with a grant and mentorship from successful tech entrepreneurs. The contrast could not have been more stark, but I took no joy in my cousin's failure or my family's financial distress. Instead, I doubled down on growing my business, determined to succeed, not to prove them wrong, but because I genuinely believed in what we were building. The spring following Gift Elite's collapse, I reluctantly attended our family Easter gathering. I had been avoiding these events, but my grandmother personally called and asked me to come, saying it would mean a lot to her. I could never say no to her. The atmosphere was noticeably subdued compared to previous years. My parents looked tired, with new lines etched around their eyes. My father, usually boisterous and opinionated, was quiet and withdrawn. My mother made strained attempts at cheerfulness that fooled no one. Jackson arrived 3 hours late in a brand new sports car. An incongruous display of wealth given the recent bankruptcy of his business. He offered vague excuses about traffic and seemed oblivious to the tension his presence created. Throughout dinner, he avoided any mention of Gift Elite, instead talking about his plans to travel and explore new opportunities. After the meal, I stepped outside for some fresh air and overheard a heated conversation through the open window of my grandfather's study. Jackson and my father were arguing. "You promised this was just temporary cash flow problems," my father said, his voice tight with anger. "You said the contracts were coming. We took out a second mortgage based on your assurances. These things happen in business." Jackson replied dismissively. "The market shifted. It wasn't my fault." $200,000, Jackson. Our retirement savings. I will pay you back eventually. I just need some time to regroup and figure out my next venture. Their voices dropped, and I moved away, not wanting to eavesdrop further. As I walked through the garden, my Aunt Diana approached me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting she had been crying. "Calvin," she said quietly, "can I talk to you for a moment?" We sat on a bench beneath an old apple tree, and she sighed heavily. "I know we have not always been supportive of your business," she began, surprising me with her candor. "The family is very worried. Your uncle and I put in $50,000 and your parents even more, we thought." She trailed off. "You thought Jackson's business was a sure thing I finished for her." She nodded miserably. "There are rumors around town. People saying Gift Elite was mismanaged, that there were signs of problems early on that we ignored because we wanted to believe in Jackson's success." I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to point out the irony of their unwavering faith in Jackson's flashy but flawed business model while dismissing my carefully planned venture. But she looked so defeated that I couldn't bring myself to add to her distress. "I am sorry things didn't work out," I said simply. In the weeks that followed, industry rumors about Gift Elite's failure intensified. Suppliers reported unpaid invoices, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Former employees shared stories of chaotic management and wasteful spending on office luxuries while basic operational needs went unaddressed. I maintained a professional distance from the situation, focusing instead on Inventory IQ's continued growth. We had expanded to serve over 200 businesses across the region and had developed partnerships with several point-of-sale system providers. Our team had grown to 8 full-time employees, and we had moved to a better office space, still modest but functional and professional. The local business journal that had once featured Jackson's launch party now published an analysis of Gift Elite's failure, titled "Style Over Substance Lessons from a Startup Collapse." The article questioned the business model's sustainability and cited over-reliance on family funding without proper accountability as a contributing factor to its downfall. One evening, I received another late-night call from Jackson. Unlike the previous call, he sounded completely intoxicated. "Calvin," he slurred, "you got it right. I fucked up. You did it the right way." I was taken aback by his admission. "Jackson, are you okay? Where are you?" "Some bar downtown." "Does not matter. I just wanted to tell you. They all believed in me, and I let them down. You had no one, and you are succeeding." "That is not entirely true," I said. "I had supporters, just not family ones." "I need your advice," he continued, ignoring my comment. "How do I fix this? How do I make it right?" I tried to offer genuine guidance, suggesting he start by taking responsibility, creating a repayment plan for family members who had invested, and perhaps getting some business education before attempting another venture. "Too hard," he mumbled, thinking of just staying in Europe indefinitely, starting fresh somewhere else. Despite my complicated feelings about Jackson, I tried one more time to reach him. "Running away won't solve anything. It will just confirm what everyone is starting to think about you." "And what is that?" he asked defensively. That you were in it for the glory, not the hard work. That you are willing to take risks with other people's money, but not willing to face the consequences when things go wrong. There was a long silence before he hung up without another word. A week later, my grandmother called to tell me about another family meeting I hadn't been invited to. This one was focused on how to handle the financial fallout from Gift Elite's collapse. Jackson is making promises again, she said, claiming he has investors lined up in Europe who will help him launch a new venture that will be even bigger than Gift Elite. He is asking for more money. Are they considering it? I asked, astonished. Your parents are hesitant, but they are desperate to recoup their losses. They have already delayed retirement, and the second mortgage is stretching them thin. Grandmother, they cannot seriously be considering giving him more money after what happened. Fear makes people do foolish things, she said wisely. They are afraid of admitting they made a poor investment decision, afraid of facing retirement with diminished savings, afraid of the neighbors finding out about their financial troubles. The next day, I read in the business news that Gift Elite's bankruptcy proceedings had revealed over $500,000 in total debt, far more than the family had been led to believe. Creditors were pursuing legal action, and there were mentions of possible financial improprieties that might warrant investigation. Shortly after this news broke, Jackson disappeared as promised. A brief message to the family announced he was taking time to reflect in Europe with no specific return date mentioned. He left behind the financial wreckage of Gift Elite for others to deal with, including my parents, who were now facing serious financial strain in what should have been their pre-retirement years. The same week, Jackson fled the country. Inventory IQ reached a significant milestone. We were featured in a national technology magazine as one of the most innovative small business solutions of the year. The exposure led to a surge of new customers and inquiries from potential investors interested in helping us scale nationally. As we celebrated this recognition with a team dinner, my phone lit up with a text message from my father. It was the first direct contact in months. Congratulations on the magazine feature. Proud of you. The message was brief and came far too late. But it represented the first acknowledgement from my family that my business was legitimate and successful. I didn't reply immediately, unsure of how to respond after so much time and hurt had passed between us. 2 years after launching Inventory IQ, the company had transformed beyond my initial vision. We now employed 30 people in a modern office space in a desirable tech corridor of the city. Our client base had expanded to include several national retail chains, and we had developed specialized versions of our software for different industries from bookstores to breweries. A prominent business magazine ran a feature on Inventory IQ titled "The Quiet Revolution in Small Business Inventory Management," highlighting our user-friendly approach and exceptional customer service. The article included a sidebar naming me one of the entrepreneurs to watch in the coming year. The day after the article was published, I received a text message from my mother, the first in many months. Just saw the magazine article. Congratulations. We always knew you would do well. I stared at the message for a long time, noting the revisionist history contained in those last 7 words. We always knew you would do well. It was a complete rewriting of their actual response to my entrepreneurial aspirations, which had ranged from dismissal to active discouragement. Still, I responded with a simple thank you. 3 days later, my parents made a surprise appearance at my office, bearing a gift basket and forced smiles. My assistant showed them into my office looking confused, since I rarely received personal visitors at work. "Mom, Dad," I said, standing to greet them with an awkward handshake from my father and a stiff hug from my mother. "This is unexpected. We were in the neighborhood and thought we would stop by to see your operation," my father explained, though our office was nowhere near their usual haunts. "Quite impressive, son." They looked around my office with newfound interest, noting the awards displayed on the wall, the modern furnishings, and the view of the city skyline. "Would you like a tour?" I offered, still trying to process their sudden appearance after so much distance. As I showed them around, introducing them to my team and explaining our operations, I noticed how they nodded approvingly at every turn. My father asked detailed questions about our server infrastructure and security protocols, while my mother commented on the professional atmosphere and the youth of our staff. "You have built something real here," my father said, sounding genuinely impressed. "From the ground up." After the tour, they suggested lunch at an upscale restaurant nearby. Over appetizers, the conversation remained superficial, covering safe topics like the weather and local news. But as our main courses arrived, my mother broached the subject that was evidently on their minds. "We have been thinking a lot about your journey, Calvin," she said carefully. "Your overnight success is quite remarkable." I nearly choked on my water. Overnight success. "Mom, I have been working 16-hour days for over 3 years to build this company. There was nothing overnight about it." She waved her hand dismissively. "You know what I mean. You are so young to have achieved so much already." My father leaned forward. "Son, we want to reconnect properly. It has been too long since we have had you over for a family dinner. How about this Sunday?" Despite the warning signals flashing in my mind, I cautiously accepted their invitation. Perhaps time had given them perspective, and this was a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Sunday dinner at my parents' home began awkwardly, but cordially. My mother had prepared all my childhood favorites, an obvious attempt to evoke nostalgia. My father opened an expensive bottle of wine, something that would have been reserved for special occasions in the past. As we ate, my father made several comments that increasingly raised my suspicions. "I always believed you had a good head for business," he said, contradicting years of dismissive behavior. "You just needed time to find your path." My mother joined in the revisionist history. "Remember how we used to tell everyone our son would be a successful businessman someday?" I did not remember this because it had never happened. They had consistently downplayed my entrepreneurial interests while praising Jackson's more traditional career path until he suddenly pivoted to his ill-fated business venture. The conversation gradually shifted to my company's future prospects. "So, what are your expansion plans?" my father asked. "Are you considering bringing in outside investors?" "We are growing organically right now," I replied cautiously. "We have had interest from venture capital firms, but I am wary of giving up too much control too soon." "Smart," my father nodded. "Keep it close to the vest. Keep it in the family, so to speak." That phrase triggered my internal alarm. My father had never shown interest in the details of my business before. But now he was probing about ownership structure and future plans. "You know, Calvin," he continued, "I have a lot of business connections from my years in corporate management. I could help you with the business side of things, free you up to focus on the technical aspects you enjoy." I set down my fork. The business is running quite well as Island. We have a talented team handling various aspects of operations. My mother reached across the table to pat my hand. "It is so wonderful to see you doing well, especially after Jackson's unfortunate situation. We always tell our friends about our son, the successful businessman." "Do you?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "That is a recent development." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table before my father cleared his throat. "Calvin, there is something your mother and I want to discuss with you." He exchanged a look with her before continuing. "We have been thinking about your company's success, and when you really look at it, this is a family achievement." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "A family achievement? In what way?" "Well, we raised you, educated you, instilled the values and work ethic that made this possible," he explained, as if it were obvious. "And now that the business is successful, we think it would be appropriate for us to have some involvement." "What kind of involvement are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew where this was heading. An ownership stake would be fair, my father stated matter-of-factly. Perhaps a seat on your board of directors for me so I could offer guidance on major decisions. I sat back in my chair, stunned by his audacity. Let me make sure I understand. You want an ownership stake in the company you refuse to invest in. The company you dismissed as a pipe dream. The company I built with no help from you whatsoever. My mother jumped in her voice, soothing, but patronizing. Calvin, honey family supports each other. That is what we have always done. Is it? I challenged. When did you support my business aspirations? We are facing some financial challenges, my father admitted, changing tactics. After what happened with Jackson's business, our retirement plans have been severely impacted. We thought as family, you would want to help. The pieces finally clicked into place. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about money. My parents saw my successful company as the solution to the financial hole created by their investment in Jackson's failed venture. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You refused to invest $5,000 in my business. You then invested $50,000 in Jackson's business, which failed completely. And now you think you deserve ownership in my multi-million-dollar company because we are family. My father's expression hardened. We gave you everything growing up. Private lessons. Summer camps. Your first car. We paid for your education. I worked through college. I corrected him. I had scholarships and took out student loans which I paid off myself. The car was a 15-year-old hand-me-down that I maintained with money from my computer repair business, which you always dismissed as a hobby. You are twisting things, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. We have always supported you. No, I said firmly. You supported Jackson. You believed in Jackson. You invested in Jackson. You only care about my success now because you see it as a potential solution to your financial problems. My father's face flushed with anger. This ungrateful attitude is exactly why we were hesitant about your business acumen. Success has clearly gone to your head. The conversation devolved from there with years of resentment surfacing on all sides. I pointed out their history of favoritism and rejection with painful specificity. They responded with defensive justifications and attempts to rewrite history to cast themselves as supportive parents who had always believed in me. I came here tonight, hoping for genuine reconciliation, I said, finally standing up. Instead, I find you want to claim ownership of my success, after contributing nothing but discouragement. I think we are done here. Calvin, don't be dramatic, my mother pleaded. We are just trying to look out for the family's interests. The family's interests weren't a consideration when I was working 80-hour weeks to launch my company, I replied. They weren't a consideration when I was eating ramen noodles to make rent while developing my software. And they certainly weren't a consideration when you were celebrating Jackson as the family's first real entrepreneur while completely ignoring my efforts. I left their house that night, emotionally devastated by their entitled attitude, but also with a strange sense of clarity. The parents I had sought approval from for so long had finally shown their true colors in a way that couldn't be misinterpreted or excused. That night I barely slept, turning over the encounter in my mind. The next morning I called an emergency meeting with my business partners and our company attorney to discuss protecting the company from any potential claims. While legally their position was baseless, I wanted to ensure there were no vulnerabilities they could exploit. After a week of reflection and consultation with both legal counsel and a therapist, I arranged to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. I arrived early to collect my thoughts, knowing this conversation would be difficult but necessary for all of us. They arrived, looking apprehensive. My mother's usual polished appearance seemed slightly disheveled, and my father's confident demeanor had diminished. They sat across from me, and an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "Thank you for meeting me," I began calmly. "I have given a lot of thought to our last conversation, and I wanted to clarify some things before we move forward, whatever that might look like. I pulled out a small notebook where I had jotted down key points, wanting to ensure I expressed myself clearly without being derailed by emotion. First, I want to acknowledge that there is hurt on all sides here. I understand that Jackson's business failure has created financial hardship for you, and I am genuinely sorry about that situation. However, that does not create an obligation for me to solve problems I had no part in creating. My father started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I have listened to you my entire life, and now I am asking for the same courtesy. He sat back, lips pressed into a thin line. My company Inventory IQ is entirely my own. I conceived it, funded it, built it, and grew it without family support. The legal structure is clear and unambiguous. There will be no ownership stakes granted to family members who chose not to invest when invited, and there will be no board positions created to give decision-making authority to those who have not earned it. My mother's eyes welled with tears. Calvin, we are your parents. We only want what is best for everyone. I believe you think that I acknowledged. But your actions have consistently demonstrated that you prioritize appearances over substance and tradition over innovation. Those are not values that align with how I want to run my company or live my life. I took a deep breath before continuing. That said, I am open to rebuilding our personal relationship separately from any business considerations. I would like to have a healthy relationship with my parents, but it must be based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. So you are just going to abandon your family when we need you? My father asked, his voice rising. After everything we have done for you, I am not abandoning anyone, I replied firmly. I am establishing healthy boundaries. If you want to rebuild our relationship, I am willing to work on that through regular family dinners, perhaps even holiday gatherings eventually. But my business and my finances are not part of that equation. My mother tried a different approach, her voice trembling with emotion. We just want to be part of your life, your success. Is that so wrong? Being part of my life does not entitle you to ownership of my achievements. I explained gently. If you want to share in my success, start by genuinely celebrating it, without trying to control or possess it. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, cycling through guilt tactics, emotional appeals, and eventually grudging acceptance. By the end, my parents seemed to understand that I would not be moved on the business issue, though they were clearly disappointed. We will need time to process this, my father said finally. But we do want you in our lives. I want that too, I assured them. But on new terms with new understandings. We parted with a tentative agreement to meet for dinner the following month, with business discussions explicitly off the table. Over the next year, Inventory IQ continued its upward trajectory. We expanded nationally, opening offices in 3 major cities and growing to over 100 employees. We launched new product lines targeting specific industry verticals and were courted by several major investment firms interested in helping us scale further. Throughout this period of growth, I found myself increasingly drawn to mentoring other young entrepreneurs, particularly those without family support or connections. I established a small investment fund, specifically for founders who, like me, had been told their ideas were not worth backing by those who should have believed in them first. My relationship with my parents slowly improved, though it would never be what I had once hoped for. We established a cordial rhythm of monthly dinners, where we discussed neutral topics and gradually rebuilt some measure of trust. They eventually stopped making references to owning part of my company, though I occasionally caught my father eyeing my success with a mixture of pride and regret. 6 months after our coffee shop conversation, Jackson returned from Europe subdued and apparently humbled by his experiences. At a family gathering, he approached me privately. "I owe you an apology," he said, catching me by surprise. I took the easy path, used family connections and money, instead of doing the hard work, and I failed spectacularly. You did everything the right way, and I respect that more than I can say. His apology seemed genuine, and while I would never fully trust him, I appreciated the gesture. When he mentioned struggling to find employment due to his failed business, I connected him with a friend at a marketing firm who was willing to give him an entry-level position. Family gatherings gradually became less tense, though the past was never forgotten. The experience had fundamentally changed how I viewed family obligations and expectations. I had learned that true support came from those who believed in you when you had nothing to offer in return, not those who only showed interest once success was assured. Through building my company, I had created something more valuable than just a successful business. I had formed a network of friends, colleagues, and mentors who became my chosen family, supporting me through challenges and celebrating achievements without agenda or expectation. As my grandmother wisely put it during one of our regular lunch dates, blood makes you related. Loyalty and respect make you family. 3 years after launching Inventory IQ, I was invited to give the keynote address at a regional entrepreneurship conference. Looking out at the audience of aspiring business owners, I shared the unvarnished truth of my journey from rejection to success. The road to building something meaningful is rarely straight or smooth, I told them. Sometimes the people you expect to support you will be the first to doubt you. Sometimes those doubts will fuel your determination to prove them wrong. And sometimes the family you create along the way will be more important than the one you were born into. I had found peace with my past and confidence in my future. My worth was no longer tied to family approval, and my success was sweeter for having been earned entirely on my own terms. Define success by your own standards, I concluded. Build something that matters to you, not to please others. And remember that the most important investment is not money but belief, whether that comes from family, friends, or most importantly, yourself. Today, as I look at what we have built, I feel nothing but gratitude for the journey, challenges, and all. Would I have preferred family support from the beginning? Perhaps, but without those early rejections, I might never have developed the resilience and determination that ultimately led to success. Have you ever had family members who only supported you when it benefited them? Drop a comment below about how you handled the situation. Did you establish boundaries like I did, or find another way to address it? Make sure to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life experiences and share with someone who might need to hear that success is possible, even without support from those who should believe in you first. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the best revenge is not proving others wrong but proving yourself right.